So Ken, like dealer's choice here. What do you think coming out of this game last night? Cincy to 6-6. Jacksonville takes a loss. I think the other two teams are really live in this division. So thoughts coming out of the Bengals win on Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it starts with just like how much do you think Lawrence is going to play and how many games and how effective do you think he's going to be? And that's a little bit of a subjective answer to a certain extent. We were talking before or in the last commercial break about maybe what it's going to be. Both of us, even before we talked before the show, I think both of us probably came to the same conclusion, at least about this week, which is really, really unlikely to play, even though like the door has been left open for him to play by Doug Peterson. Seems really unlikely he's going to play. At Cleveland, too, which say what you want about the Browns, their defense got torched a little bit. Still a really good defense in a home game with weather. Maybe not the game to trot, Trevor Lawrence out there with Myles Garrett coming around the edge, no matter what condition Garrett's in. So, okay, out for this week. And then I think it's a lot of like, we don't know. I think it's a lot of we don't know what this is going to be. This is a player who has played with a ton of injuries before. There was speculation his knee was really messed up in the middle of this year. He was playing anyway. There was probably some truth to that, although maybe it was overblown a little bit. But the point is just like guy who plays with a lot of injuries is going to play with an injury. And it makes it really tough. Like it's the classic. It's what we talk about when a guy's not in any game. If the quarterback's playing, but he's not 100%, how do you value that? Like he's going to play. Like I think he might play next week. I think it might be just like a 1 week absence. It seems possible. So however you answer that question will probably determine, do you want to bet a bunch of stuff? If you think he's back and it's like, okay, he's 50%, he's 75%, he's not as mobile, whatever, you may not want to bet a lot into the AFC South or teams to miss the playoffs in the AFC when that reopens or any other. There's not really a lot of award applications here, but you may just kind of be like, I'm going to wait and see what this is like. If you think that this is a really big deal, it's likely to be a multi-week absence, which we just don't know, then you're going to kind of have your dealer's choice here of the Texans and the Colts. And it's worth noting if you did want to pick between those two teams, the Texans are much more likely to win their game this week. So if it's which price is going to improve the most this week of the three teams, Jags, Texans, Colts, Texans are the biggest favorite. They're the most likely to win. Their price is the most likely to get better.
In Week 18, the Colts will host the Texans, and Indy has beaten Houston already head-to-head back in Week 2. So, like, Indianapolis will hold that advantage if it comes down to it for a wild card spot or for the division in the final game of the season. And just on Lawrence, and I'm obviously not a doctor. I won't do the I play one on TV joke because it's overplayed. You don't have to be a doctor to know this. We talk about this all the time on the show. We talked about it with Saquon Barkley, right? High ankle sprain earlier in the year. The Giants kept lying to the press, like, Saquon will be back. Actually, he's questionable. Like, no, he's not. High ankle sprain, like, you can't cut. You're a position player, like you wide receiver, tight end, running back. Like, you can't play with a high ankle sprain. Like, you can't run and cut. You're out 4 to 6 weeks. Quarterback's a little bit of a different story. You can play with the high ankle sprain. You just can't move. And Lawrence's mobility is such a huge part of his game. Like, no one thinks of him the way we think of a guy like Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson, for instance. But he can move. He scores a bunch of rushing touchdowns, too. I think it's a big deal for Lawrence if he's going to become, statue pocket passer. Can still be good. He just won't be Trevor Lawrence.
What about this week? Doug Peterson says it's possible. Maybe not. When would we see him again? What would his kind of mobility be? What percent do you think he'd be the rest of the season? What's your best? I know you're kind of plugged in with the Jags. I'm sure you thought about it. I'm sure you have an opinion here. How long do you think Lawrence is out? Do you think there's any chance we see him on Sunday against Cleveland?
No way. No way he plays this week. Not with a high ankle sprain. No way. If it was a normal ankle sprain, you'd say, okay, maybe you tape it up and you go out and you play, but not with a high ankle sprain. I think he's a couple weeks, which doesn't help them because their schedule, the next 2 weeks is the tough part of the schedule, and then it softens up. Then you have, 3 games you get Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Tennessee to close out the season. So if it was flipped, I think it would be better for them, but obviously it's not. Can they win at Cleveland with C.J. Beathard? Possibly. It's not like Cleveland's dynamic on offense either. So, it's a bad situation. But more than that, other things let them down last night. The defense was atrocious. I mean, that was an awful performance for a defense. And they had played okay this year. They weren't great, but they turned the ball over and they got after the quarterback. They were terrible against the run last night, which is something that's been a strength for them. And then the other thing is, they can't run the ball. The center is bad. He's 6'5". He's too big to play the position. He doesn't get low. He gets high, and they can't run the ball. So you add it all up, it's not a good combination even with Trevor Lawrence right now.
This comes courtesy Jeff Howe from The Athletic, who you might remember from the Mac Jones-Bailey Zappi report a couple of weeks ago. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Yes. That's like Steve's son. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence going to rehab he's going to rehab around the clock this week. Rehab around the clock to give himself a chance to play through his high ankle sprain.
Put your hair cast on and join me.
So Lawrence going to rehab around the clock. Like, who speaks like this? Around the clock this week to give himself a chance to play through his high ankle sprain. Too early to know how the ankle will respond and whether he'll be available, but they aren't ruling it out yet. Okay. I've been doing this a long time. I worked in the NFL media. I feel like I am actually better probably, and I'm always honest. I suck at almost everything. I think at this, I'm like better than 99.9% of people. Like translating crap like this. Trevor Lawrence is not playing on Sunday. Like, that's it. Like, great, he can rehab around the clock. He has a high ankle sprain. He's not playing. I guess I could be wrong. I think I'm probably right. Anyway, so there you go. He's going to rehab around the clock tonight.
Well, a couple things then. Does this trick the market momentarily into giving like 3-110s back? In which case, like maybe bet Cleveland. Maybe that's the right answer because it'll pivot back the other way when he's out again. And then it's worth noting, like, we got to this point and we're both like, yeah, Cleveland's going to win. Okay, like if we really, and I haven't bet it yet to be fair, but like if we're really more confident in that than the price, then maybe we should bet Houston to win the division. Because like play it out. We're really confident Cleveland wins. Jacksonville takes another loss. We like feel more confident that the market that's going to happen. Not even that we think Houston's going to win, just then that price is going to get even better. Like if they beat the Jets and this happens, then obviously it gets much, much better. So like, I guess that's worth considering. And then here's another thing to consider in addition to that. If we think this is going to happen, coach of the year is going to be really, we'll do like a full breakdown on Thursday. Jim Trotter, who covers the NFL for The Athletic, basically tweeted this like while we were in a discussion in the last hour. And you'll start to see a lot of national writers Coach of the Year is a really fun, every year it's a really fun discussion topic. You'll start to see a lot of NFL writers write pieces about it or start to tweet about what they would do. Some of them vote, some of them don't. And Jim Trotter tweeting, if I were to rank my NFL Coach of the Year candidates today, they would be as follows. And he puts in parentheses, in an extremely close race. And I think that's really interesting based on the following. 1, Shane Steichen. 2, DeMeco Ryans. 3, everyone else. So basically, like, the implication here is you have 2 improvement coaches. You have the 2 coaches in the AFC. So, like, when I say improvement coach, I mean the way NFL Coach of the Year is typically awarded, team that goes from not very good to good. As opposed to sometimes it's like a team, Bill Belichick goes undefeated, he wins, et cetera, et cetera. We've done this on the show a lot. You've got these 2 improvement coaches. They play in the final week of the season. If we think the Jags are really, really, like, kind of down here a little bit, then it's kind of like, A, who do you like to win the division? And then if you like a team to win the division, that's going to if whoever wins the division that isn't Jacksonville, guess what? Their coach wins Coach of the Year. And you can this isn't Jim Trotter is not like going rogue here. This is the conversation that's going on everywhere right now. DeMeco Ryans is getting a ton of credit for what's happening, and Shane Steichen is starting to get much more credit for what's happening. And like that's dominating the conversation. And Sean Payton to a lesser extent, and I don't think he's out of it. But like you lose, you drop out of the conversation a little bit, and he has a chance to get back in it. So And it's just worth noting, you know who you don't hear? Dan Campbell. You know who you really don't hear? Mike McDaniel. Like the players who are coaches who are occupying a ton of win probability still, you don't hear their names ever. So just really interesting, like now that we start to get the feedback from the people who will end up either voting or, like sort of like thinking the way voters do, it's always interesting to get their results back and see how it compares to how we thought it was going to go. Like people who handicap it, who talk about it, whatever. So like we kind of think it's going to be this, and then the media comes back and says, no, it's this. And I think you're starting to see that happen right now. And I think it's like Ryans and Steichen, and we've talked about it. They may play the final week of the year. That might be for the division, and that might be for Coach of the Year, just to emphasize what we were doing before. I would compare his season very favorably or very similarly to the season that SGA had last year, where SGA was like up for kind of like most improved player. He was actually so good he couldn't win it. Like he was already too good. He averaged like 30 points a game. I don't know if he made first team all NBA. I think he did make first team all NBA last year, first or second team all NBA, but like made a leap forward to be like a really compelling MVP caliber player. That's what he did last year, but you would have never bet him to win it. Yeah, even while it was going on, you would have never bet him to win the award. That's how I think about Halliburton this year. Like an emerging, really interesting player who can win MVP next year or 2 years from now. The MVP in the NBA moves so glacially. Every you always want to think guys are ahead of schedule. You always have to wait a long time on them. And I had a lot of people be like, Halliburton, like, what do you think? Be like, well, I think he's awesome. Like, I think he's one of my favorite players to watch, certainly, in the entire league. He shoots almost 50% from three on like 10 attempts. I mean, it's like completely ridiculous. Some of the shots he was making last night over Derek White and Holiday, like outstanding stuff. It's just not this year. It's just not going to be this year. Oh, by the way, the guy that he's chasing, Jokic, is like having his best season ever. He leads the NBA in total points, rebounds, and assists. I know a lot of buzz around the Pacers after what seemed like kind of like almost a franchise-altering win, the way it was described afterwards, as they beat the Celtics and advance in the in-season tournament. Tyrese Halliburton getting like a ton of shine right now for like MVP, as like a player to watch this year, obviously. Rick Carlisle, Coach of the Year, getting talked about to a lesser extent. I did some stuff in the first hour of the show. I don't even want to tell you what I said necessarily. Do you buy Halliburton as an MVP guy? Do you buy Carlisle as a Coach of the Year guy? A lot of interest in the Pacers right now. What about them in award markets?
So, like, if you're chasing bets that are going to, like, gain a lot of CLV by the end but are not going to win, then that's what Halliburton is here for MVP. Where, like, is there a world where, like, he gets it if Joker doesn't play enough games and if Embiid doesn't play enough games and if the Thunder come back down to earth and if his numbers are that much better than Jason Tatum and the Pacers win 50-plus games, then sure, we might actually seriously be talking about it. Think about how many ifs I just talked about. Like, he's going to make – I think he's going to make the ballot. Like, that's the thing is, like, he's going to make ballot, but do you want a ticket on somebody that's going to make the ballot, or do you want a ticket on somebody that's going to win the thing, or that you can at least hedge against with it being down to two guys? I don't think it'll be down to him and somebody else. So don't like it there. I will say he's made All-Star last year. I do have a ticket on him for most improved. I kind of wonder if he's going to be the guy. Like, Tyrese Maxey is obviously the favorite and very likely to win, and he's going to be an All-Star too. But when we look at guys that go from like, oh yeah, no, Tyrese Halliburton's good, to like, oh, Tyrese Halliburton's the engine for like a top 5 offense, and the Pacers are going to win 45 to 48 games. I do kind of wonder if that could be a sweat. If you've got Maxey, I would at least consider looking at Halliburton, because he does check a lot of the boxes, and as far as like Ja and some of the other guys we've seen win that award in recent years.